in many instances, people react to you, not based on who you are, on your humanity, but on your position. You might, for instance, if I walk down the street today without the diplomatic plates and all the brouhaha, nobody knows that I'm a diplomat. But then sometimes people are talking to you, and then once you let on that, oh, Your Excellency. And it says a lot about how we look at ourselves and how we look at others. I am not a title. The job doesn't give me substance. I bring substance to the job.
Welcome to the Global Indian Podcast, the world's greatest journey and the official platform for people of Indian origin. Because let's face it, we are everywhere. My name is Rajan, and on our weekly show, we plunge into the human experience of being a person of Indian origin, take a closer look at the countries we now call home, and tackle the issues you need to know more about. This is the world's greatest journey that will ultimately change the way you see the notion of Indianness to be, and importantly, our connection to each other. Every week, the team and I are joined by our guests, where we have open conversations about the 50 shades of brown that is our experience, and take a closer look at the issues close to their hearts. In this episode, we travel all the way back down to London to meet with two of my dear friends. The first, as you know, Kulvinder Ghir, who is a remarkable writer, actor and social custodian. And secondly, my dear friend Kevin Isaac, a prolific poet, one of the greatest out there. He is a talented public speaker, and as he'll always say, he moonlights as a diplomat. What this conversation results in is a free-flowing discussion about the role of parenting, about the role of identity, people of Indian origin, and importantly, how do we put title before the human? It is an extraordinary conversation that really does plunge into everything in between those, from the way that we parent, the way that society brings us up to believe in, through to having a look at what makes us us. As always, these podcasts have been proudly supported by our dear friends at ShareMe.com, the app for your beauty, fitness and wellness needs. If you'd like to find out more about the Global Indian series, or even get involved with us guys, it couldn't be easier. Listen to the end of the podcast. There we'll give you a couple of tips on how to reach out to us. As always, I hope you enjoy this session.
And just move. Get up 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 and just.
Are you a poet first or a diplomat?
It depends. I think I'm a father first, a poet second, and I moonlight as a diplomat.
I like that. I think all diplomats should be poets.
It helps. Some time ago, I was telling Raj, I had done an interview, and I remember the host says to me, "But how do you reconcile being a diplomat and a poet? Because you write poems which are so full of feeling. Don't you think people are going to think that you're soft?" If you've had children, you'll realize they are the best diplomats.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh
yeah. Well, and you
they know how
definitely
to play you and to get what they want, and it's remarkable.
That's so true. You know, how many children do you have?
3.
Oh wow. Boy, girl, girl, boy, 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 girl.
2 boys and a girl.
Oh bless.
Yeah.
That's great. And what ages are they now?
They're that age where they hug you every day and tell you how much they love you daily. They're between 8 and 12. So
oh, okay.
Yeah. I blossomed late, unfortunately. So you know.
How old were you when you had your first child?
Ooh la la, I'm afraid to tell you, but let's say I was past 35.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you have an older boy, or how did they come? Boy?
The boy
girl?
first, he's
Okay.
12, and then he had a second sibling who's a
Right.
boy, and then the girl came last.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
I thought, I had 2 boys. Let me give it another shot and see what happens, and it worked. How
excellent.
about you?
Vegetarian, simple living, high thinking.
Yeah, and no children?
No, I do. I have 2 gorgeous, beautiful children. Yeah, and they're still here with me,
Yes.
and hopefully one day I will be. They're still here.
You'll be rid of them.
I'm glad you said that. Because I thought you were going too soft.
I didn't want you to tell you in the beginning, but I'm also a mind reader, but I just wanted to bring that in slowly.
No, it's so true. I mean, it's quite strange. My daughter now, she's the elder. She's 18, and
Yes.
she's about to go to college, start uni in September.
Oh wow!
So, and my son Louis, who's 14, who at the moment, what can I say? At the moment with this, I'm living with these teenagers who are, to a certain extent, really kind of have their own directions. And you're absolutely right by saying, and they give you so much.
Yes.
And they don't stop giving in that sense, And you have to compromise in so many different ways in certain things, and you do have this kind of diplomacy to edge more towards the girl. In one sense, as a father, you're much more concerned.
Is that so? And here I am thinking I'm being very balanced.
This is where the diplomacy comes out, Kully.
Yeah.
And it varies at different stages, obviously. But this time, she's embarking on her journeys, and
yes.
Like you say, they're ready to go and venture, and you want to have them be smart and clever and live and have children later than earlier, and all those things while the world is, and that's the great thing about and they are really absolutely right, a real source of inspiration in a way to
joy.
And how much they give you in that unconditional love.
Exactly. Yeah.
But then I can't wait, in one sense,
to start the journey again.
Because it's, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, because you, in one sense, traveled with it, and because the prior to the work that I do is, actually, it's going to enhance it. That's what it's going to do.
I'm sure.
Because when we work, when we create, it matters. So they made me think about my work does matter. It should.
Yes.
It can make changes, and when you listen to the Innocents, what the changes are, you get the message from them. So, but yet, I love touring and able to go and work in different parts of the world, and go and see different people and experience different cultures and all those.
You weren't talking about getting a break, were you? You're just open-minded and you want to embrace the world. It has nothing to do with that.
Well, in my solid sort of way, in my kind of work as an actor or a writer, in that sense, you say, God, it's only really in the last 3-4 years one has been able to start doing a little bit more theatre work and travelling and start because you've been spending that time with the kids, and and now they are. And at the same time, you try to balance an income. And then again, you're playing with poetry, because sometimes that income doesn't come that way.
There you are. It doesn't at all. You have to have other plans. Yes, indeed.
So you have to kind of have your passions really in the right order.
Yeah.
Well,
and your
well,
objective.
I was going to say, welcome to Parent Hour on the Global Indian Podcast.
Yeah.
There we go,
So
Kevin.
we should call it Parent Hour. I think we do a good job of that.
Why
I
not?
think,
Why
I
not?
think it's great.
Mhm.
I think you're a dad yourself now, Rajan. Hey,
Yeah.
no, you're
Hence the grey.
Hence the grey.
Mm.
you know, and what are you experiencing that as a parent for your
Oh,
children?
wow. It's definitely shaped me. It changes you.
How old are
Because-
they?
Oh, wow. Arin's 1, Lara's 5, who's going to be 6 next month. It changes you. It shifts you. Because I'm getting those questions now of where do babies come from?
Really?
And
And then you tell them the
Kevin.
story, yes, or the Amazon packaging thing.
No, I do something far more smarter than that, Kevin.
What's that?
I say, ask your mum.
Oh, she's with you.
Yeah. There's like, there you go. It's weird. I overheard a conversation she had with her friends from school, and they're talking about boyfriends.
What?
Yeah, exactly. And I heard the Rocky Balboa music going off in my head. So I thought, okay, let me stop back and watch. And thankfully, when she's talking about boys and everything else her friend does, one of the candles fall because she's playing about it and it hits her foot. So I said, Lara, what are you talking about? She goes, about boys. I said, don't do that because you're only going to end up hurting yourself. Things will fall off around you. And then knowing that she's a bit careless when she talks, she did it again and something else fell. Since then, it stopped it. So in a way, it's been quite fortuitous. Just that fate in itself of things falling around. But it's been interesting. It shifts you and it changes your perception and perspectives in a powerful way. And I didn't think it would be as strong, but you realize it then and there, you know.
And have you lost the weight yet?
When I saw you last, you had lost quite a lot of weight.
Cheers, Cully. He's talking about my earlobes, evidently, you know. Yes, it was a hard pregnancy. It really was. But thankfully, you know, through good nutrition and doing Vedic medicine, you know, I tell you the hardest thing was my mother-in-law came in and she lived with us guys for 4 months when Aaron was born. The hardest thing wasn't her living with us, is actually when she left, because then you realize how much of a help it was.
Yes.
And the other hard thing was actually admitting that to her. I was like, oh, okay, fair enough. But anyway, Kevin mentioned something to me yesterday, and it sparked off an incredible thought in my head. And I'll let you paraphrase it, Kevin, but it's about being able to hear or recognize the raindrops through COVID.
Yes. Actually, I'm still massaging it, but I'll read it to you. It says, I recognized several raindrops yesterday. They smiled at me and I smiled back. I had not seen them for ages. They had grown, matured. They were still desperately beautiful, excitable, picturesque, and refreshingly pure. I listened to their song, their pitter-patter on the glass wall, their dancing feet on the terraced roof, their sweet swooshing sound encircling the wind. It was just absolutely beautiful to renew old acquaintances. It reminded me how much I had missed the soft simplicity, the soothing calm, and the delightful reassurance of raindrops.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's lovely.
It's not finished yet, though. It just came to me and I just scribbled it.
And it takes you back.
Yeah.
It's such what I love is it's I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Anyone who has ever heard rain
Exactly.
and has a great connection with that, and it doesn't.
Growing up in the Caribbean, you know, you have houses with these galvanized like roofs, and so you hear the rain, and it's almost like it's tap dancing, and you feel a certain sense of connection to it. And then, having left the Caribbean many moons ago, yesterday when I was listening to this, or the day before, it just took me back to those days, the pure, simple days where life wasn't as it is in these parts of the world, where you have to worry about your neighbors, and it was just that pure, clean simplicity that I relished.
Do you think that it's because, I don't know, maybe we start, I'm not far from thinking that way, in a consistent way, where you think, is it an age thing?
No, I hope not.
I hope not.
I remember some years ago, I was in the Middle East, and we were having a meeting with the Prime Minister, who said something I had said reminded him of himself when he was my age, and he says, "How old are you?" I said, "North of 39." He said, "No, seriously, how old are you?" I said, "Seriously, north of 39." And I've not grown past 39 since then, so I'm hoping this is not age. But
yeah,
no, I think it's more a sense of, you're here in London, like every day you're rushing to do something, to go somewhere. And this COVID pandemic, I said to myself, I had no idea I could be such a model prisoner, because I'm exemplary in my acquiescence to stay at home, be safe, and so forth. But then I stood by the window. There were no sounds of planes. The planes usually come into London like one every 3 minutes. So you're hearing the sound of planes. The cars are swooshing past, the trucks, the honking, and I could actually hear silence. I could hear raindrops. I could hear life. It's like I was standing at the balcony looking at some plants that I have, and I'm saying, I can even watch them grow, because there's nothing to disturb the tranquility that you feel and you sense in this moment. So.
and that took you first all the way back to the Caribbean,
Exactly.
and reminded you of that innocence and that
Precisely.
of that land, of what that time was.
Time
And
and
the beauty, the beauty is actually the darkness behind it. What you say, what lies underneath, within the this virus that brings us in a way that makes us look back at that past in that purity of that drop. I think it's beautiful. It's very sad and yet very very dark in itself. It's lovely.
It's sad, but there's also a sense of cleansing, because I wrote another poem last week, and I was reflecting on COVID, and at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, what is really important? And this brought home to me, you listen to the television and you hear people dying in multiples, and it's just a television story. But when you stop, there are families. As I said in the poem, this is a mother, a brother, a sister, a father, a cousin, an uncle, a grandmother. These are people in multiples of one who matter to individuals and families, but their stories are not being told, because you're just hearing this big globalized view of the pandemic. But when you bring it down to the simple one-on-one, you realize people are suffering. People are in pain.
I think that's the thing. It's because COVID's given us that blessing in that sense, whereby we can sit back and we have the bandwidth to think it through, to allow ourselves, if we choose to do so. But to get to that stage,
I think it's even it goes. Your poem's really, hitting me in a sense, like, that drop, and those drops are really from the same ocean.
Exactly.
And there's no indifference in that ocean.
No.
And when they dissolve back, they go back to that ocean as well. So
Yeah.
It's beautiful, and it means. I'd love to hear it when you finish it.
Yes, indeed. My pleasure. Yes, yes.
That's good.
I suppose what always fascinates me, Kevin, is whenever we meet, it's your way of looking at the world. Because one thing that Kevin's always said, it's a strange thing that you mentioned yesterday, when we're walking around in the big cities, whether it's London or wherever it may be, our minds are almost programmed to see the value in people through their occupations rather than who they are. I thought that's unfortunate testimony to the times in which we're in. And one thing that's always outstanding me about Kevin is that he's very open, and you're a diplomat. You work with the highest echelons of society, yet you remain so earthly in your demeanor to everybody. And I thought that's a really good message to have for an audience, to say, actually, from that space in which you are, how should we be thinking? How's your version of reality, and what shaped you in becoming the person that you are? Because it is absolutely extraordinary. Like you gave me a story once, Kevin, of the China cup and the plastic cup.
Yes.
Like this is such a clever story, actually.
Well, I had stolen it from somebody, and I don't know if Kulvinder had heard it, but it was this former Assistant Secretary of State in Pentagon. He had been invited to give a speech, and he said his ticket had been bought. He traveled in business class. He was met at the airport, put in a taxi, taken to the hotel. And when he got to the hotel, his room he had been pre-registered. Somebody took him to his room. Later the evening, he had to give the speech. They picked him up, took him to the venue, and somebody escorted him to the back, handed him a ceramic cup with coffee. A year later, he was invited back to give the same speech, relatively same speech to the same audience, and he was forced to pay his own way, economy class, and blah blah blah. So he went to the hotel by taxi. He had to check himself in and so on. He got to the venue to give his presentation, and he asked, "Could I please have a cup of coffee?" And the lady pointed him to the corner of the room and said, "There's a coffee machine, and you can have one of those styrofoam cups." And he says, at the end of the day, we are all just a styrofoam cup. We don't deserve anything more than a styrofoam cup, because in many instances, people react to you not based on who you are, on your humanity, but on your position. You might, for instance, if I walk down the street today without the diplomatic plates and all the brouhaha, nobody knows that I'm a diplomat. But then sometimes people are talking to you, and then once you let on that, oh, Your Excellency. And it says a lot about how we look at ourselves and how we look at other people. I am not a title. And I've said to St. Kitts, the job doesn't give me substance. I bring substance to the job. When I get home, my kids don't say, High Commissioner or Your Excellency, they say, Daddy. And that is what defines me, not the title. Because today I'm High Commissioner, tomorrow I'm not. Does that mean I cease to be of value because I don't have a title? You're walking around London, and that really annoys the daylights out of me, because you meet somebody and the first thing they ask, what do you do? They don't say, how are you? Or what do you do? And so if I say I don't have a job, then I cease to be of value. That, I think, is unfortunate.
Do you think what do you think is the cause of that?
I think it's how transactional our humanity has become. People want to know who you are to get a sense of what you can do for them.
Yeah. That's so true. I mean, that's how the world has been run.
Exactly.
So blame the people for that, or do you blame the politicians or the people who control that?
But I don't think it's the politicians, because even outside of the realm of politics, when you like, if I take it to the level of my children's schools, parents, you see how the parents interact. I remember once I was at a PTA, and my son was about 8 or then, and so the teachers, you're having a discussion about how the children are performing and so forth. And I remember one parent, he looked at a wall, and they were given stickers, and it is based on performance, based on behavior.
Mm.
So forth. I remember my son at the time had about 9 stickers. There was another guy who had 11, and this couple, their daughter, had 2. And that was a source of huge stress. They were very exercised and said to the teacher, but why does she have 2? And the teacher tried to explain, oh no, it's just to try and motivate the children. If they behave, if they participate in class, we give them more stickers. And
Yeah.
you know,
Then maybe listening to you there, Kevin, is maybe then it's in our parenting then.
it could very well be, because this parent was concerned that 7 out of 9 members of their family had PhDs. And because this child had 2 stickers, then the child's future could probably well be in doubt.
Well, see, this is one thing had happened to a certain extent within a particular generation of growing up here, when kids are being pushed, especially Asian kids or immigrant kids in education.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when so much is being put on them, that to a certain extent, the pressures on that, they lose all the other assets of life itself. And it's like, I really, really want you to do well, because you get those results, you get those A's and get those PhDs, and you're out of poverty, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you can take us with you.
Yes, of course.
So
So
that's
so those particular,
transactional.
yeah. So the pressures on the children are put. So what tends to happen to that particular generation and those kids is that they haven't been allowed a way of thinking any other way.
Mm-hmm.
It's focused in a particular energy, you know, of doing well and asking. If your neighbor's doing this, then you're going to do 10 times as better.
Mm-hmm.
If your cousin's got this, you're going to be 10 times as better. It becomes and it's because the opportunity has been given as well. See, in a sense, whether it be free education or go out there and be a doctor or an optician or run a pharmacy or go a professional job. Now. And the realization of that is, you want great doctors, they need to have creativity in them.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, yes.
Do you think
let me finish there very quickly. There is just to say, when you need, so they need to have freedom as well, not pressure, of creativity to enhance our humanity.
Absolutely.
So, but that's not been the idea for those parents and bringing up, and that takes a couple of generations, and then you find that slowly
Mm-hmm.
that their kids naturally will ask for creativity and want to be something what they're not necessarily are aspiring to be. And in that way, we have a balanced society, I think, and we have a society that actually, when we see a country with joy in its creativity and actually show that off, then you'll find that even its stability, its foundations are quite strong within its structures of it. That's what in a vision, but it's yet, I feel, with our own kids, it's yet trying not to be judgmental in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yes, of course.
So if you look at it, so you can even look at that as a nation. You say, well, it's very difficult for me. I try not to be judgmental. So, but when the country is being segregated and pulled in and made into not a sociable system in any sense, that we create these divisions,
yes,
then that's when that foundation starts to shake, because we've got to look at it in an unjudgmental way, in such an equal way. The whole lot has to realize and pick that up, that actually the fight is, if there is such a thing as a fight within it, is the compassion is looking for the compassion of that country, not necessarily the monetary wealth of it.
Yes.
There's a lot of themes there. I was going to say, a lot of that sounds like would you say then that the issues are external rather than internal? Because when I look at the immigrant community or anybody, what we're all fighting for is a sense of self-worth. And so when people do ask, ultimately, what is it that you do? I don't think they're asking it, and they're asking to see what they can get, but it's also almost like a judgment for their own personal self-worth, which is a really reflective thing, but it's also a very scary thing because that shows a very different side of society. I don't know, like for you both, do you think it's an external factor? Do you think it is the fact that, as you're saying, Kuli, maybe we haven't been taught those things in school is institutional, or do we think it's more of a internal yearning that we just haven't fully developed our own sense of self?
Well, it's based on what you said. It's almost like asking a question and looking in the mirror. You ask the question, and you're saying to the person, "What are you worth?" So that I can then see whether I'm worth more. It's essentially
It's strange, isn't it? Yeah.
If you say to the person, "What do you do?" and the person says, "Oh well, I'm a hairdresser." Oh, by the way, I work with Barclays Bank, so then I now can determine how I interact with you based on the value that I've assessed to you and how I then see myself vis-a-vis what I see you to represent.
Yeah, I mean, if in that sense, I started really at the bottom of the ladder. Because my profession was looked as a prostitute.
No, really. What profession is that?
I'm an actor.
So when
I'm a in Indian term is a kanja, a man who dresses up. And yet the hypocrisy of the culture. Yet you have these Bollywood stars.
Bollywood, yes, everybody clamors.
See, that's the depths of it. So yet in the world, like when they said, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And then when the careers teacher asked me, and I said, well, I might want to go into stand-up comedy. And I said, sir, it's not that funny. Get up off the floor. Yes, honestly, sir, it's not that funny. Yes. Because I mean, that's what I mean. It's like. It's really, I think, on the individual's idea of what is there to be proud of anyway. Let's start there. If we look at the bigger picture of it, I mean, and yet I think humility has a lot to play with that, and there's a lot of power in humility. But that doesn't necessarily, and I think that doesn't necessarily mean that we make a judgment on if somebody works in Barclays Bank and say, yeah, I just clean the floors over there in the corner. It's up to the individual as much as to have the strength and the confidence of knowing, I think, who they are and their matter.
So their sense of self-worth, then saying, actually, this is.
I was saying to you, Raj, yesterday, the whole notion of always asking people what they do, as opposed to having an organic interaction, robs us of the opportunity to learn life lessons.
Yes,
huge amounts.
Because you start setting artificial distances or barriers between you and the person, and this person could have some life transforming experience that they can share with you, which can also transform your life. They can have certain life lessons which can inform your worldview and probably make you a better person. But you assume that if this person doesn't come with a very varnished and so-called sophisticated lifestyle, then they don't matter. They can't bring anything to you, and they don't have any value to add to your life. And that, I think, is unfortunate.
And it dictates almost something almost deeper in the sense of what is it that we value as human beings or as individuals, and where have those values and beliefs been instilled upon us? Yes. Because I say the same thing to my daughter. So we watch TV and everything else, but the greatest stories are the people next to you. So get used to talking to people. You know, I do it on flights all the time. I won't watch the films. I'll speak to somebody for an 8-hour flight, 9-hour flight, and you hear somebody's incredible journey along that path, and you think, wow. And they could be younger, older, whatever it may be. Is it like, Kully, like with you, it's interesting because when you first got into acting, I don't know for the most, but it probably wasn't seen as the sexiest thing as it is now. It's transformed as a profession. So that's kind of what you're saying at the beginning when you said this is what you wanted to do. People thought, well, what is it? And now all of a sudden, you're an actor. People are thinking, wow, let me kind of find out more. Have you shown the level of interest in you has changed because of your profession? Or is it because people got to know who you are?
I think the way I am is a lot to do with my profession. You know, it has opened me up about lots of ideas. I've traveled with it. I met so many different people with it. I even met my missus through it, you know. I have a child who wants to be an actor. It's not two. So, you know, a lot. But then again, I was very unselfish with it. I was very young to it because I was young. I was only 10. What do I know? At the age of 10, all of a sudden, I had a passion. I'd like something what I like doing. And I found a place where I could have control, where I could make these people laugh and make people forget stuff. And then the thrill is literature. Literature came in because the words that you read, you start learning about. And then, you know, I can go on to say as much as that, you become a storyteller. You become a poet. So with these storytellers have constantly moved our humanity on as well as telling stories. So you're part and parcel of that. And that's what you've learned through that work. And then it doesn't necessarily become monetary either. It only starts becoming monetary, I think, to a certain extent when your parents start worrying how you're going to start paying the bills. Can this pay the bill? Will this be able to do it? And then again, if you have loving parents, you know, they'll say, we're here for you, don't worry, and just follow your dreams and follow your passions. And even they haven't got a clue what it is you're doing, but they do have a kind of a commitment with you. But yet it's in all of us in that respect. You know, we all want to be heroes in one sense that we all in reason for what we do, you know, whether, you know, they want fame or whether they want 2 minutes there's reasons for why you do what you do. And when I first got going, I think it was the energy of it. And as I developed slowly through time with it, I realized what it does. And then you realize the power of it as well and what changes it can make. And then it becomes, the writing side of it becomes quite powerful because the writing side starts to speak your thoughts and your mind, how you feel, because again, they become very private in a way. But even on a social level, you say, well, if there's injustice, you can actually put it down and get that passion out of you or the anger. To be an artist, sometimes you have to be angry as well.
That is true. Yeah.
You can't just...
As a matter of fact, the other day I wrote a poem and it says, I own this anger. You need a certain degree of passion, even and anger, even if you go into politics, anger at what is as opposed to what should be. As a diplomat, how anger that things haven't changed in all the years despite repeated action. So you need, I call it constructive anger.
Definitely.
Kind of anger that you can turn on and off at a whim because of its dramatic impact and how it can send a certain kind of message.
I used to know a writer who used to say, God, I hope I don't get any good reviews.
Spurs in the drive.
And he goes,
keep going.
he goes, and he's a very political writer in that sense. He's very, very strong in his writing about his ideas. And he says, the day I start getting good reviews, he says, that's when I start failing when the world is very wrong. And it was really an amazing thing. He didn't want to be known as a socialist or a left-wing writer. He just wanted to be known as a writer.
As a writer, yes.
But yet we pigeonholed him for what he believes are and his ideas. Let's say, well, if I'm dealing with certain humanities here, and you're responsible for those humanities, you can, if there's injustice in there, then you can speak it through your words, and you can say the realities and not be frightened of it and what there is. And I think that's the joy of art, any form of art.
Exactly.
So, yes, it's been with me. It's been with me now for this way of life, and people that, as much as a diplomat may be considered, as a citizen of the world. In that respect, you want to be looked at, or you want to be looked at as a person who's from the land here, Britain, as British, and that you're proud to be British. And you're thinking that way, and you want the whole country to be in that issues of it, yet you want to write a play about that, yet you want to see the injustice of Brexit, yet you want to say all the injustice that happened in the past. As a British person, you carry all those weights with you, and yet you want to say, all I ask from my choices is a fair, equal field to play.
Yeah. And unfortunately, what people do a lot these days is create labels. So for instance, you make a statement, mind you, it might be a powerful statement that transcends time, race, anything, but then they give it a label. Oh, this is something from an Asian, a British Asian, or Afro-British, and so they try to label it so that you can then create a tremendous amount of distance from it. So instead of interrogating the point, the argument, they start redirecting your attention to the individual who's saying and speaking. And label makes it easier for us to keep people in camps and to stay in our own camps and to just disregard the value of people and the things that they say.
That's interesting. What would you do then? Because I suppose there is a human need to almost categorize things, just to almost simplify our own lives. But what you're saying is very fair as well, the fact that we will, at a whim, or whether it be the media or whichever type of industry it may be, that we create the labels to almost pigeonhole individuals to say, well, that's how they think, or that's how they believe, or it allows us to understand where it's coming from. What would you do to change that then?
It's learned behavior. There's nothing instinctive about it. For instance, when you're hungry, what do you look at all the biology of hunger and eating? No, you eat. When you're sleepy, what do? You go to bed. So for me, you meet somebody, the tendency to start questioning the person's background is a learned behaviors. And so, as I was telling you about this gentleman who I met, who has a master's degree in social studies, who has spent time working as a masseur, but who happens to be a janitor now because times are hard. You see him and you just think this is a janitor. But this is somebody who can tell you about geriatric care. You could probably have an old parent who needs help, and this guy can give you the advice, but you're not interested in his story because he comes to you with a mop and he's cleaning the floor in your building. Or you see somebody walking down the street and probably their trousers isn't pulled up as far as.
I think there's
these are learned.
But the thing is, these are all stories that needs to be told.
Exactly.
So when these stories need to be told, because they're our journeys, and maybe is to say, where that behavior. I mean, the other day I saw on the BBC where a beekeeper from Syria, who was a university lecturer over there, ran from war over there and come to Britain. And this was about 7 years ago. And they did a documentary with him about 7 years ago, when what he had done was he had started to keep bees in the back of his garden. And when that story went out, then 7 years later, the BBC went up and see what he had done. By that time, the whole community had got involved
Oh, wow.
in keeping bees,
Mm-hmm.
and his family. And yet, see how story and community move on. And yet, here was a university. Yet, you can be positive with it, you know. And those stories, they get told. And I think there are so many different types of those stories that need to be told that people can't make a judgment on people in any sense for who they are.
To bring the humanity back in human behavior. So therefore we look at people not for their careers or peripheries, but for their experiences, what they've been through, what they've seen. Is it also taking time? Because I'm fortunate in a way, Kevin, because I've actually been to the country of your birth, to Nevis. And Nevis is in particular one of the most different and unique places in the world that I've ever been to. It's the only island, Kully, that I've been where people will stop, they will say good morning, they do say good afternoon, they do say good evening. It's a really pleasant place. And so therefore, when I hear you speak, Kevin, it reminds me of, actually, do you know what? The vast majority of Nevisians, is that the right word to use?
But I was born on St. Kitts, but I say I'm from St. Kitts.
Oh, then in that case, I throw that whole thing out the window.
No, not at all. But it happens on both islands. Maybe Nevis is a little bit more relaxed, but it happens on both islands. And I remember I'd written a poem, and I said, I long to return to the place where the breezes, the winds know me by name. Because in a sense, same idea that you have, you go to Nevis and you feel it's as though there's a welcome, which is an environmentally natural welcome that embraces you and says, welcome home, and just decompress. So
absolutely,
this is the experience you get of the islands, and there's something rich, very soothing about going to these islands, and in a way it has sort of like been a leitmotif in much of my poetry, because you make these comparisons of what came before and what is happening now. Hence the raindrop. I could hear it in London for the first time in 9 years. You know, it's an experience that I never thought I'd have in London. But there's another poem that I wrote on COVID. I called it On Bended Knees, and it says, these days I hear the birds instead of planes. I see people thinking in windowsills as I watch the sun shining where clouds once stood. You know, the gray, because after the lockdown, it's as though the sun decided, I'm going to either support you or protest. Whatever the sun was saying, after 6-8 months of rain, the sun just came out for 3 weeks and just stayed there. So where the clouds were just hanging over London for so many weeks, the sun just came out. And it was like, Raj, you've seen it in the Caribbean. Sometimes you have days that run on, and all you're having are blue skies and these thin clouds just, and this is life. This is the way it should be, in a sense.
Yeah, it's see, my point is I can see how you feel and how you think from being to the places of your birth, ultimately, having a look at these places, because it makes sense. There is, and Kully, we will go to Nevis, because saying it, or St. Kitts, saying it is not the same as actually feeling it. It is such an incredible experience being there, because it is authentic, it is genuine. For you, Kevin, you're a diplomat. Poet first, diplomat second. You're in a sphere where most other people within your circle will never expose themselves as much as you have emotionally through poetry, through words. But I feel like you're at the beginning of something where you can create a real positive movement by getting other ambassadors or other individuals in political circles to actually say, let me showcase and personally express to the world what my inner feelings are. Was it an easy thing for you to do, or did it take you time just to consider, what is the impact of me writing this, and how is this going to affect my diplomatic career or my diplomatic soundness compared to other people?
You know, that's an interesting question, because the thought never occurred to me when I started writing. Because, as I said, I just started a web page, and I have verbal photography. I sent it to you.
Mm.
Yeah.
For me, poetry found me, and so it was never about me putting my emotions into it. And I remember once an old university professor of mine, who I sent a previous book that I had published, called Breakfast with My Fathers, and she wrote me this really warm letter telling me how much how sorry she felt for not having recognized the many demons that I had been struggling with all my life. And I thought, heaven help me, you know, because in large measure, I see myself as a verbal photographer. You know, Kuli, you're in acting, you have all the cameras, they take the snapshots. For me, my cameras are words. And so I take snapshots of my interaction with people, what I see on a daily basis, what I feel, or sometimes what I hear people seeing, what I hear people feeling. So I'm vicariously taking their experiences and appropriating them. So there's not much of, in some instances, some of the poems I knew, it's
Let me say, Kevin,
some I'm just a photographer.
Kevin, as an actor, my job is to get what you're saying right.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm.
So we're doing the same thing.
Sod the cameras.
Yes.
Sod everything else. Sod the payment. Sod the famous. You know, recognition is to get what's being said.
Yes.
From the heart. I am your tool for that.
Yeah, the mood. You get the mood. I am the tool of what's happening around me.
See, that's what the actor in that sense is. He starts to look at it. He pulls it apart. And he says, okay, where did this come from? Why did this happen? You know, should it matter? Does it make any change? Is it, what's this poem? So he goes all the way through all those emotions, whether he's getting paid for it or not. That's another thing. But hence, he spends half of his time looking at really good, great pieces of work and going through them. And then he goes, oh, what's this? Who wrote this? Oh, Kevin wrote this. Let's have a look at this, see what this does. And where he is and what he's doing, where he is. So see, that's what I mean. We are nomadic as people, our journeys. We meet lots of families in the writer's brain, that the families that he's introduced us to. And then we move on to another family.
Yes,
and
indeed.
then we move on to another poem. And then so we are constantly moving and adapting as actors, as creatives. We don't stop, you know. We have, and then the strangest thing is, you get other things attached with you when you travel like that. And so if you're lucky, you'll get humor, because sometimes you really need that to get through it all.
Absolutely.
Because, and the other side of it is, it's so sad when so many people suffer.
Absolutely.
And then you say, God, how far, where does this stop? When does it stop? So it's important. It matters then. And because you have children.
Yeah.
Because you lay the foundations for them, for their being, for what they want, who they are.
Precisely.
And what they need is compassion. And for our kids, which I think if we can give that, then maybe they won't stop and ask them what they do first.
Kuli, you obviously, there's a strong emotion there, and it's very pure. What drives you?
I don't know. I just it's certain things will happen or click or whatever. I mean, tried to watch this documentary yesterday, and where a lioness was hunting down a foal, you know, and you say, I can't watch that. But yet he said, let's watch. And I carried on watching it, but there was a point, there was a moment in there when the lioness was just looking at it and looked at it as a foe. See, those beats are strange, because they say, well, actually, sometimes we are like that, you know. We don't, and humanity is in such a place where it's them and us, or and put in places of indifferences, and one is better than the other, whether it be social or whether it be color or whatever it may be. You just say, well, I want it to stop.
Yeah.
That's simple. I just want it to stop. So you can have a fair play. Everyone can have fair play.
Yeah.
Everyone can have the opportunity, you know. One doesn't, you know, is better than the other. And we have to look to the future for that. We can't constantly look at the past as well. Yes, the past does matter, it informs us, but let's change the future.
Exactly.
Kevin, for you, because I suppose what's really interesting is that we're all in those creative spaces, and within those creative spaces, it enables us to delve really deep into our hearts and showcase and use our methods of expression. For you, Kevin, it's your verbal photography. You're translating the outer world into beautiful bits of not poetry, but true emotion of words that describe things. And it's almost in a way that you have to do it for somebody who's blind, that you have to write those words that describes in the finer tunities of life. And for Kully, yours is likewise on both sides. Yours is on screen, is showcasing through your actions, your tonality, your movements. But ultimately, we're all mediums of expression. The idea of fairness and fair play, like, how do you translate that, Kevin? Because you're in a world like us. You deal with almost a political side, but also, more importantly, the very humanistic side of dealing with people's lives. Is the world a fair place, in your opinion? Is there any such thing as fairness? And what is it?
It's a rather philosophical question. But in a sense, there is fairness and there is unfairness. But then that's the essence of life, the ebbs and flows, the differences, you can't have fairness if there is no unfairness. You can't have wealth if you don't have poverty. But it's within that that continuum, where do you choose to stand? What do you want your actions to represent? Do I want to be one of those who spends my life preying on the weak, or do I want to use my strength to make sure that those who are perceived to be weaker become stronger? Do I want to use diplomacy to make myself well known and get rich? Or do I want to use my diplomacy as that bully pulpit to represent the interests of those who are not able to represent themselves? And I think we each have to find our own paths. And fairness comes in the action that we take. Unfairness also comes from the action that we take. We have to determine for ourselves, once we've found our path, where do we want to go?
Yeah, is finding one's purpose and then making sure that you can map it from there. Exactly. And it's like, when I look at the notion of fairness, do I think society is fair? In my own perspective, I think it is, in that sense that we all have an opportunity to change the mode if we choose to. If we look at a system that doesn't necessarily work, we have the ability to shift that system, to change it. But I suppose it comes from having the exposure of expression, of being able to see what other people do. I suppose the interesting thing about all of us is that we travel a lot. And I always say to Kully and yourself, Kevin, I feel like a time traveler sometimes. You go from one country to another that you think, wow, okay, I've been to another place that's 20 years behind that or 20 years ahead of that. And you can almost see those cultures start to shift and change and bend and maneuver. And then you come back to this perspective of home, whereas you never quite know if London is home or not. But you're here and you think, wow, what are the new medicines I can bring back to the tribe? Tribe being my own community. What can we learn from all these travels that we've been through? And it's not about systems, it's about this evolution of thought. Now, for me, the Caribbean's had this huge impact on me, and that's a massive thanks to yourself, Kevin, because you're the one that was the chief architect behind the initial conversations many, many years ago. And it's being there and seeing it and understanding what, and you're going to be proud of the word social cohesion. The social cohesion, and you think, wow, my perspective of life is so different. What I valued and what I thought was to be true is really just me looking at the world through my own lens, not as it is. And once I kind of separate myself from that, and rather having the expectations of things, but open myself up to see the world and say, okay, I'm no longer part of it, but I can watch it and observe. Then it enables me to almost, as counterproductive as it sounds, to actually enter it and start making a difference, because now I know where I am. I know my value chain. Kuli, it's very brave of you to open up. Like you're such a wonderful guy. Honestly, it's like, because you really have your pulse, your fingers on the social pulse. I think a lot of people don't know that about you, that you really do care. You honestly really do care about a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, I think shouldn't everybody?
But I don't think. But you're very humble, but people don't see that of you.
No, but see what it is. See, I don't know. Look, there's so much pain, you know, and there's so much hurt, and there's so much goes on, and you know, you get to live in this idea and what you do and why you do in the respect, and then you learn. But my confidence is, if anything, is it's just, I don't know. What can I say to that? You know, it's something that speaks how I work. If I can't feel the resonance, if I can't feel it, especially now, it's important, because time, you know, time is short. You know, it's getting shorter and shorter and shorter in that way. And if you see something suffering or something happening or what's going on, and yet you say, I only want to go away and write a sitcom about something else that has got no concern about what you can't help but, as an artist, look at something in a different way. You look at the life of I was reading the life of Zoran Music, the artist. He, you know, it's a strange life. He used to paint in his younger days, landscapes, beautiful landscapes, and then he was put into a concentration camp. But he never stopped painting, even when he was in there. But when he came out of the concentration camp, you look at his work, it's not the same person. So within his work, so what happens in our work, if things will change us. And then we start realizing, when we have our own children that we love and we care and we want what venture is upon them, we say, my God, we need to make them resilient.
I can honestly say this podcast has moved and shifted in such a beautiful way. It's almost like a mosaic of human behavior and human feelings. And it's really nice. It's not what I expected, but it's moved, and it's what it should be, right? I told you, what a fantastic episode. Two remarkable people at the top of the game, having a discussion about life and everything else in between. Now, we've all been there before. You go to a wedding, and what's the first thing anybody ever asks you? It's not really about how are you, or how's your mental, physical, or spiritual growth, or any other of those denominations. It's always, so what is it that you do? Now, I do understand it could be the wedding season for some, but it's totally inexcusable. Now, after this conversation, what's your action points? Never again do we fall into that pattern. let's always put the human before the career, before the title. Because as Kevin and Kully rightfully put it, there's so much more out there, isn't there? Now, I made a promise to you. If you'd like to find out more about the Global Indian series, couldn't be easier. Now, whichever platform that you're listening to this on, you will find at the bottom of there a call to action so you can find out more about us guys, whether it's through our affiliates that we've now got over 63,000 audience via, or you're listening directly via the Podbean channel, which is globalindian.podbean.com, or YouTube. Just simply type in the Global Indian series, you'll find out all the details on us guys. Wherever you're listening, make sure you like, you subscribe, and you comment. Because with your feedback, we're able to do more exciting shows like this. Also, make sure you touch base with us. Reach out to me via my Instagram handle, which is @thenazrans. There you can touch base, tell me about your story, about things that you love us to talk about. Or ultimately, we can get you involved in the platform as well. We'll love to make this happen. Because the reality is, this is not just ours, it's yours. It's a collective, bringing the community around the world together in a powerful expression, say, this is who we are, whilst creating a living encyclopedia of who we are. It's never been so important until now. I hope you enjoyed this session, and if you want to, make sure you share this to people who you feel need to be in the know. Until next week, I hope all remain safe. Speak to you soon.